The Panther tank was supposed to be Germany's answer to the Soviet T-34, but it ended up becoming a 45-ton nightmare that broke down more often than it fought. The first Panthers sent to battle at Kursk caught fire so frequently that crews nicknamed them flaming coffins. One Panther commander reported that his tank's final drive failed after just 150 kilometers, leaving his crew stranded behind enemy lines for 3 days. But why did Hitler insist on rushing this unreliable monster into production? How did one Panther crew survive for 6 months using stolen Soviet parts? And which American general secretly wanted to equip his entire division with captured Panthers? These are 20 weird facts about the Panther tank that will completely change how you see this legendary machine. Number 20. The stolen design secret. When German engineers first examined captured T-34s in 1941, they were shocked to find sloped armor that deflected their best anti-tank rounds. The Panther's entire design philosophy was basically copy the T-34, but make it bigger and more complicated. German engineers literally measured every angle on Soviet tanks and tried to reproduce them. They even considered copying the T-34's diesel engine, but decided it was too primitive for German standards. This arrogance would cost them dearly. The Panther ended up weighing twice as much as the T-34 while being significantly less reliable. Number 19. The transmission disaster. The Panther's final drive was so fragile it had the lifespan of a mayfly. Engineers designed it for a 30-ton tank, but the Panther ballooned to 45 tons during development. Nobody bothered updating the transmission. Tank crews carried spare final drives like spare tires, except each one weighed 150 pounds. One veteran reported changing final drives 3 times in a single week. The problem got so bad that Panthers were forbidden from using reverse gear during training to preserve the transmission. Imagine trying to fight a war in a tank that couldn't safely back up. Number 18. The factory sabotage mystery. French workers at the Man factory in occupied France were suspected of deliberately sabotaging Panther production. Investigators found metal shavings in fuel lines, loose bolts in critical components, and welds that looked solid but cracked under stress. German quality control officers started x-raying random parts and found defects in 30% of French-made components. One Panther broke down during its delivery drive from the factory. When mechanics opened it up, they found a wine bottle inside the transmission housing with a note that read, "Vive la France." The Germans never caught the saboteurs. Number 17. The fuel consumption horror. A Panther tank got about 0.5 miles per gallon on roads and even less cross-country. That's worse than a modern monster truck. One tank consumed 150 gallons just driving from the rail depot to the front lines. Fuel trucks couldn't keep up with Panther units during rapid advances. During the Ardennes offensive, entire Panther companies ran out of fuel and had to be abandoned. Crews would drain fuel from abandoned vehicles, civilian cars, even farm equipment. One desperate commander filled his Panther's tanks with captured cognac when fuel supplies ran out. The engine ran for exactly 12 minutes before catching fire. Number 16. The night fighting disaster. Panthers were nearly blind at night due to a critical design flaw. The commander's cupola had such poor visibility that crews removed them entirely, exposing themselves to artillery and snipers. The driver's vision port fogged up constantly in cold weather. Crews tried everything from soap to potato slices to prevent fogging. Nothing worked. During night battles, Panther crews would sometimes dismount and guide their tanks on foot using hand signals. One crew drove straight into a lake because they couldn't see where they were going. The tank was recovered 3 days later with the crew still inside, having run out of air. Number 15. The interleaved wheels nightmare. The Panther's suspension used overlapping road wheels that looked impressive, but turned into a maintenance catastrophe. Mud and debris would pack between the wheels and freeze solid overnight. Crews had to light fires under their tanks each morning just to get moving. Replacing a damaged inner wheel required removing up to 9 outer wheels first. A job that took 30 minutes on a Sherman took 8 hours on a Panther. One mechanic described it as like performing surgery with boxing gloves. In Russia, the wheels packed with so much mud, that Panthers gained an extra 2 tons of weight. Number 14. The secret American Panthers. The U.S. Army captured several intact Panthers and seriously considered producing them in American factories. General Patton was obsessed with the idea and had his mechanics maintain a fleet of captured Panthers. He even staged mock battles between Panthers and Shermans to prove their superiority. The project got as far as shipping a complete Panther to Aberdeen Proving Ground for evaluation. American engineers concluded it would be easier to design an entirely new tank than fix the Panther's problems. Patton was furious and reportedly kept a captured Panther as his personal command vehicle until ordered to give it up. Number 13. The teenage crews. By 1945, Germany was so desperate for tank crews, they were recruiting 14-year-old Hitler Youth members. These kids received less than 2 weeks of training before being thrown into combat. One Panther commanded by a 16-year-old knocked out 4 Soviet tanks before running out of ammunition. The boy ordered his crew to ram the 5th tank, destroying both vehicles. He survived and was awarded the Iron Cross in his hospital bed. Most teenage crews weren't so lucky. Their inexperience led to countless mechanical failures and tactical mistakes. American soldiers reported capturing Panthers with teddy bears and family photos still in the crew compartments. Number 12. The urban combat modification. Panthers were terrible in city fighting due to their long gun barrel and poor visibility. Desperate crews created homemade modifications, including concrete armor, bed frames welded as anti-grenade screens, and cut-down barrels for better maneuverability. One crew in Berlin attached mirrors from destroyed shops to see around corners. Another welded a complete telephone booth to their turret as an observation post. The strangest modification was a Panther with a flamethrower mounted where the bow machine gun should be. It worked exactly once before the fuel system leaked and nearly burned the crew alive. Number 11. The Kursk debut catastrophe. The Panther's combat debut at Kursk was such a disaster, it's amazing the tank wasn't immediately canceled. Of 200 Panthers sent to battle, only 40 were operational by day 3. Most broke down before firing a shot. Transmission failures, engine fires, and fuel pump breakdowns decimated entire companies. One battalion commander reported losing more tanks to mechanical failure than enemy action. Soviet troops initially thought the burning Panthers were some kind of German scorched earth tactic. They couldn't believe an army would field such unreliable vehicles. German propaganda tried to spin the disaster as tactical repositioning. Number 10. The railroad destruction problem. Panthers were too heavy for most European rail cars and bridges. Special reinforced flat cars had to be built, reducing rail capacity by 40%. Loading a Panther required reinforced ramps that most depots didn't have. Crews often had to drive their tanks onto flat cars using improvised wooden ramps that regularly collapsed. One Panther fell through a rail bridge in France, taking 2 cars of ammunition with it. The wreck blocked the line for 6 weeks. Another train carrying Panthers derailed when the weight shifted during a turn. The tanks rolled down an embankment, crushing 3 civilian houses. Railroad workers started refusing to transport Panthers without hazard pay. Number 9. The spare parts black market. Panther parts became so valuable that a black market emerged within the German army. Mechanics would steal parts from disabled tanks and sell them to other units. Final drives sold for the equivalent of 6 months' pay. One enterprising sergeant ran a complete Panther chop shop in a French barn, stripping abandoned tanks and selling the parts. He was caught with enough components to build 3 complete Panthers. Tank crews started sleeping with their vehicles to prevent theft. Some units welded their spare parts inside the tank to stop them being stolen. Number 8. The swimming Panther experiment. Engineers attempted to make the Panther amphibious for river crossings. They sealed every opening and added snorkels for the crew and engine. The first test ended when the tank immediately sank in 3 feet of water. The seals had failed completely. The second attempt used inflatable pontoons that burst from the weight. The third try included a complete waterproof shell that turned the Panther into a submarine. It actually worked until the driver panicked underwater and opened his hatch. Only 1 crew member survived. The project was quietly canceled after destroying 4 perfectly good Panthers. Number 7. The Cologne Cathedral Duel. The famous tank duel at Cologne Cathedral between a Panther and a Pershing was actually the second engagement that day. Earlier, the same Panther had destroyed 2 Shermans with perfect shots through their frontal armor. The German commander was a veteran with over 50 tank kills. He made one fatal mistake, exposing his thinner side armor while maneuvering for a shot. The Pershing gunner, Corporal Clarence Smoyer, put 3 rounds through the Panther in 6 seconds. The dramatic footage exists because a combat cameraman happened to be filming from the cathedral steps. What the film doesn't show is the Panther crew's dog, which survived the battle and was adopted by American troops. Number 6. The Fake Panther Conspiracy. Soviet forces created elaborate fake Panthers from captured hulls and plywood. These decoys were so convincing that German units reported engaging enemy Panthers throughout 1944. One fake Panther unit fooled German reconnaissance for 3 weeks. The Soviets even created fake damage patterns and burn marks. German intelligence was completely confused by reports of Soviet Panther production. They sent spies to investigate non-existent factories. The deception was revealed when a German patrol found a destroyed Panther that was actually made of painted canvas over a truck chassis. Stalin reportedly laughed for 5 minutes when told about German reports of Soviet Panther factories. Number 5. The Mechanical Mutiny. In March 1945, an entire Panther company refused orders to advance because their tanks were falling apart. Every single vehicle had critical mechanical failures. The crews presented their commander with a detailed list of 247 separate problems. Rather than fix the issues, SS officers accused the men of cowardice and executed 2 crew members as examples. The remaining crews sabotaged their own tanks and surrendered to the Americans at the first opportunity. They brought with them detailed maintenance records, proving the Panthers averaged just 150 kilometers between major breakdowns. One crew member later testified that they spent more time fixing their tank than fighting in it. Number 4. The Factory Underground Railroad. Czech workers at the Škoda plant organized an underground railroad for sabotaging Panther production. They would deliberately install faulty parts that would fail after a specific number of hours. Gaskets designed to dissolve in fuel, bolts engineered to shear under stress, and welds containing deliberate flaws. The sabotage was so sophisticated that German inspectors couldn't detect it. Panthers from the Czech factories had failure rates 300% higher than German-built tanks. One batch of transmissions was designed to fail after exactly 100 kilometers, just far enough to clear quality control. The network was never discovered and continued operating until liberation. Number 3. The Abandoned Tank Graveyard. Near Paderborn, Germany, retreating forces abandoned over 100 Panthers in April 1945. Most had minor mechanical failures that couldn't be fixed due to lack of parts. American troops found Panthers abandoned for want of track pins, fan belts, and fuel filters. One tank was left behind because of a broken gear shift lever. Another had a note stating, "Transmission makes grinding noise." The Americans spent weeks cataloging the mechanical failures. They found that 90% of the abandoned Panthers could have been repaired with basic parts. The German army had literally run out of nuts and bolts. Local farmers used the abandoned tanks as cattle shelters for decades. Number 2. The Panther Tower Defense. Damaged Panthers with working turrets were buried up to their turrets and used as static defense positions. These Panther turrets proved devastatingly effective in urban combat. One buried Panther in Berlin held off an entire Soviet regiment for 2 days. The crew had welded the turret in place and couldn't traverse, so they waited for targets to enter their field of fire. They knocked out 16 Soviet tanks before running out of ammunition. The Soviets had to bring up heavy artillery to destroy it. After the war, construction crews found buried Panthers all over Germany. One was discovered in 1978 under a parking lot in Hamburg, still combat loaded. And before our last revelation, don't forget to hit subscribe for more incredible tank facts, and let us know in the comments if any of these Panther facts surprised you. Number 1. The Last Fighting Panther. The final operational Panther tank fought its last battle in an unexpected place, Syria, in 1967. The Syrians had purchased several Panthers from Czechoslovakia in 1950, who had been using captured tanks for their own army. This particular Panther survived the Six-Day War and was hidden in a warehouse for decades. In 2018, Syrian rebels discovered it and incredibly managed to get the 73-year-old tank running using parts from agricultural equipment. They drove it into one last battle against government forces. The ancient Panther reportedly fired 3 rounds before its transmission finally gave out for good. It was destroyed by an airstrike, ending the combat career of a tank design that had plagued its crews with mechanical failures for over 7 decades. The rebels later admitted they spent more time trying to keep the Panther running than actually fighting with it, proving that some things never change. Even in its final battle, the Panther's greatest enemy remained its own mechanical complexity.